Okay, can we take our seats so we can get ready to start? Okay, everyone, welcome. What's today, 29th? 30th. Welcome to the Wednesday, October 30th Caucus and Work Session of the Albany Common Council. Mr. Jimenez, please call the roll.
Adams. Anane. Ballerin. Clark is absent. Farrell.
Here.
Flynn. Frederick.
Here.
Hoey.
Here.
Johnson.
Present.
Keegan.
Here.
Kimbrough.
Here.
Love.
Here.
Robinson. Romero. Zamer.
Here.
11 present. We're also joined by City Clerk Shaniqua Jackson, Deputy City Clerk Demetra Brown, Senior Assistant Corporation Counsel Brett Williams, Research Counsel Jake Iceland, and Legislative Director Brian Jimenez.
Thank you. Okay, going through the agenda, we'll have a public hearing on the budget. It's ordinance 28, 21, 24 by Ms. Frederick. And next, on to local laws. The local law L of 2024 by Mr. Anani. It's local law amending Article 1 relates to employee residency requirements. Mr. Anani is not here. In any case, it'll be going to the Law Committee for further discussion. Which I'm sure will be very, very interesting discussions around the residency. All right. Next on to ordinances introduced by Mr. Ballerin in planning, ordinance 65, 111, 24. It's ordinance amending chapter 375 of the USDO in its relation to requirements for signs. That'll be a referral to planning. The next by Mr. Johnson, ordinance 66, 111, 24. It's ordinance a USDO amendment changing the zoning of 31 Trinity Place from residential townhouse to mixed-use neighborhood edge. Also planning. Referral to planning. And, let's see. Tentatively could be taken up ordinance 28, 101, 24. That's the budget ordinance. Just be on the lookout. The next, I didn't miss anything, did I? Under resolutions introduced, to resolution 122, 111, 24R by Ms. Keegan, resolution of council in recognition of Native American Heritage Month. It's Ms. Keegan's. I'd like to be a co-sponsor, but do you want to say anything?
I mean, I think the legislation is relatively self-explanatory, and it's been on the docket, but I'm happy to have all of you join me in co-sponsoring if you are so willing.
Okay, thank you. Then next by Ms. Frederick, resolution 123, 111, 24R. It's the budget intent resolution. That's going to be a referral to finance. Also, next, the resolutions held by Ms. Frederick, Resolution 8281-24R. It's a resolution approving transfer of budgeted funds to salary positions. It's DGS equipment operator that went through your academy, your committee. Positive recommendation. It's the DGS one, 8281-24R.
For the position, yeah, that passed out of committee with the unanimous recommendation.
So we'll be taking that. Up. All right. So that's it for. Did I mention I'll be offering the October 21st meeting minutes for approval? I will be. Okay.
I'm sorry, we passed a few pieces out of planning, a couple of
Ordinances?
reappointments, as well as the resolution for the franchise agreement and for St. Rose. So, resolution 9391-24R, the reappointment to the Sustainability Committee, as well as 9491-24R. Those are two reappointments to the Sustainability Committee, as well as resolution 10292-94R, which is the franchise agreement. We also passed I think it was ordinance 2381-24. Let me take a second just to double check. Is that the one? Yes. Okay, yes, the St. Rose one. Okay, so those are, so
Okay, run those by me one more time.
so those are the three resolutions and one ordinance that passed. That I'd like to see if that can get on the agenda for Monday.
Okay. It's just one more time. The ordinance.
Ordinance 2381-24, which is the St. Rose ordinance. Resolution 9391-24R, 9491-24R. Those two are reappointments to the Sustainability Committee. And then resolution 10292-24R, which is the franchise agreement.
Okay. All right. So we all got that, right? Under ordinances held, ordinance 2381-24. We'll be voting on that. And then in resolutions, the two sustainability reappointments, 9391-24, 9491-24, as well as the franchise agreement, which is resolution 10292-24. All right. We good. That's it for the agenda. Do you want to talk about the MC?
Oh, yes, thank you. I'll be drafting and working with staff to pull together an MC for Monday. This would be for a upcoming fitness expo at the Albany Cap Center on November 16th, held by Victoria Fitness. Just doing a resolution to recognize them. They're bringing a first ever Black Fitness Expo to the Cap Center, and so want to congratulate and recognize them for that event that they will be having.
Okay. And we'll get that out to members in email. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Holly?
Yeah, and yesterday the Albany High School boys soccer team lost in a semifinal, but it was the first time they've reached the semifinals in 5 or 6 years. They've only reached the final once back in 2012. But anyhow, I'd like to do a resolution, not this coming meeting, but the following meeting. And if anybody would like to co-sponsor with me, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson. Oh, put us down. So, Ms. Farrell, did you, okay. All right, so I think we're,
Quick budget update for everyone. So the tentative plan that we were striving for was passing the budget on November 4th. However, we have amended that to vote on the budget on Monday, November 18th, to give us more time to go through our proposals, our proposed changes, and pull together a budget intent memo. As of right now, we had our last presentation by the CPRB last night and started to work through our bond ordinances. So tonight we have that to continue to get through, and then we'll have a couple weeks to wrap up everything else. As soon as we get to a good point with the budget intent memo, we will share it with everyone, and we will plan to vote on the budget again November 18th, but our public hearing still remains for Monday, second public hearing at 7 p.m., Monday the 4th. Thank you.
thanks. Mr. Hawley.
Yeah, I got a question for Councilmember Frederick. I'd still like to put, like in the intent, is there any way we can talk about the animal control that we need to see more?
Yeah. So we are actively actually working with our staff to determine what exactly we can do. I think we have some differences of interpretation, but what I can say right now is animal control is definitely a big focus area. And so whether we're recommending a position or potentially finding another path, we will be wanting to request another animal control officer as part of the budget. And also, one of the things we learned in that conversation was that they do not have access to the city clerk's data for the animal licenses in our city, and that's just a little bit of red tape that goes on when they have to reach out to the city clerk, and it's extra steps. So we are also going to be requesting user access for all of animal control so that they can easily access that data and do more in terms of penalties, etc.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. With that, we'll adjourn so you can start the finance meeting. Anybody have anything else? No? No?
Okay.
Okay? All right. We are adjourned.
Do we need to swap anything? We can stay in our chairs, but are we going to keep rolling? Switching it? Okay. We'll start in 1 minute. Let's just give another minute. Our budget director should be joining us.
No, I think the later, prior December meeting will probably be.
All right, so our budget director may be joining us soon, but I think we can get started here. So, we recording? Thank you. Okay. Welcome to the Wednesday, October 30th meeting of the Finance Committee to discuss the proposed fiscal year 25 budget. Committee members present are Committee Member Ballerin, Keegan, Adams, Farrell, and myself. We are also joined by President Pro Tem Kelly Kimbrough. From our staff, we have our City Clerk, Shaniqua Jackson, our Deputy City Clerk, Demetra Brown, our Legislative Director, Brian Jimenez, our Junior Policy Analyst, Alyssa Kamara. Oh, my apologies. She is not here. And we are also, yes, and we are also joined by our Research Counsel, Jake Easland. With that, we're going to pick up where we were yesterday. Now, just because we do not have our budget director just yet, and we're not necessarily sure when he's going to be joining us, I think we can go through and then we can mark any particular bond ordinances we have questions on or want further details on. And if there are no questions on a particular bond, based on your previous read of the bond, then we can proceed to make a motion. So just to pick up, yesterday we went through 30, 102, 24 through 39, 102, 24. We passed out 30, 102, 24 through 38, 102, 24, and we held on 39, 102, 24 to gain further insights, which we should be getting shortly. So we're going to pick up with 40, 102, 24, if everyone can get to that location. Okay. So 410224 is an ordinance authorizing certain purchases by the City of Albany, New York at a maximum estimated cost of $100,000 and authorizing the lease financing or the issuance of 100,000 serial bonds of said city to pay the cost thereof, DGS greenhouse replacement. Based on the particular ordinance, it looks like it has a useful life of 15 years, again, $100,000, and this is to construct a greenhouse at DGS headquarters. Any questions or
We're
comments?
talking about 4102, right? Not 41.
410224.
Yeah, it just sounds like 41.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I can see
I was
that.
so confused. I was like, what?
Yep. And for the record, we're also joined by Councilmember Hoey. Any comments, questions on this ordinance? Okay. Do I have a motion? Councilmember Adams.
Make a motion to move ordinance 40.102.24 out with a positive recommendation.
Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Farrell. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Ordinance 40.102.24 passes out of committee with a positive recommendation. Our next ordinance we have is ordinance 41.102.24, an ordinance authorizing certain purchases of the City of Albany at a maximum estimated cost of $3,366,000 and authorizing the lease financing of the issuance of $3,366,000 serial bonds of said city to pay their costs thereof, DGS Waste Management Plan. The objective or purpose is ongoing implementation of the Waste Management Plan, and the probable useful life is 25 years. Any questions? Councilmember Keegan.
This is in relation to the potential development of the transfer station, correct? Just want to make sure.
I believe so.
That's my understanding, that, I mean, we can also wait to, if,
Yeah.
this might be a good one to just wait for Gideon for. I'm pretty sure that that's what it's the planning and then process to kind of transition our dump to not a dump. But it would be nice to hear from staff directly to.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my other significant concerns with this is that we're essentially being told and not necessarily involved in the.
There's 3 members. So Councilmember Frederick, Councilmember Flim, and I are all on the committee that is going through, that will be going through the process. It's just started. So there are council members involved in it.
I do understand that, but we are bonding this year in a way that puts us in a position that this is the plan that we're doing, and we're not actually looking at any other alternatives other than the plan that has been laid out by DGS. And we have not, in my opinion, been included or provided the ability to ask for any other alternatives for how our garbage is going to be handled up until this point, despite many, many requests to have those conversations with them. And that's my one concern with this bond, is that we are really, like, in agreeing to bond out this money, we are absolutely agreeing that in my opinion, that we're doing a transfer station, and that's the direction that we're going in.
I agree that we should get more information before you vote on it. I think that that's the ultimate thing, that we just need more information.
Let's hold on 41. We're gonna ask for more information on that. And we're gonna proceed to 42-102-24. This is an ordinance for $2,747,000 serial bonds for DGS maintenance equipment. The objective and purpose is machinery and equipment needed to maintain the golf course, parks, and other services throughout the city. This $2,747,000 of serial bonds will lead to a useful life of 15 years for said equipment.
If you'd like, I have the DGS presentation, and it lists out the equipment, if people would like me to read it.
Perfect, yeah.
We have one street sweeper for a cost of $341,000, 11 dump, salt, and plow trucks for $1.8 million, well, 1.821, one wheel loader for $270,000, a sand pro for $35,000, a workman for $50,000, two street vacuums for $80,000, and 3 mowers for $150,000. So total is 20 pieces of maintenance equipment.
Thank you, Councilmember Farrell. Any additional comments, questions? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to move ordinance 42-102-24 out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Motion by Councilmember Adams. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Farrell. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, ordinance 42-102-24 passes out of committee with a positive recommendation. Next up, we have ordinance 43-102-24. This is authorizing serial bonds for $1 million to pay the cost of DGS public bathrooms. The objective and purpose is the acquisition and installation of automated restroom facilities citywide. Estimated cost is $1 million, useful life 25 years. You recall during our DGS presentation, we did hear about this plan for I believe the term was self-cleaning facility to be built. And I'm forgetting the location if anyone else remembers that.
I believe the plan was to run a pilot at a number of city parks with multiple self-cleaning bathrooms in response to, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a period, I want to say, there was several public comment periods over the last several years where people have requested to have public bathrooms installed adjacent to public parks, particularly for parents with young children who may be toilet training, because trying to hoof it back a half mile to your house when your kid says I have to go is virtually impossible. And then part of the conversation that we've been having is how do you ensure that those bathrooms remain clean, so on and so forth. And this was, I think, the pilot solution that they want to test out to resolve that issue. Because once you put bathrooms there, they have to be maintained.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Keegan. Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I apologize, I missed the DGS presentation. Did they talk about how many and what locations they were looking to put them in?
They, I believe, did. I just don't have that information. So again, with any of these, happy to hold and get that detail so that we're comfortable with the bonding of $1 million.
Okay. Are they going to lock them up during the dust time, or how does that?
We didn't go to that level of detail, but we can definitely ask that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So we're going to also hold on 43-102-24 for some further information. Okay. We're moving to ordinance 44-102-24, an ordinance for the issuance of $1,178,000 serial bonds for DGS Hudson River gateways. The objective purpose is the enhancement to North Hudson River Gateway for $1,178,000. Comments, questions? Councilmember Keegan?
I believe this project also has partial funding, correct? Do you guys remember that
Yes.
from our meeting?
Yes.
I can't remember what grant we got, but we got grant funding for this.
We did. Yeah, we talked about that, this was a portion that we were paying. We did receive funding from, I believe, the state.
I don't have any specific concerns about this project.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty far along in public engagement and planning, so.
All right. Sounds like I have a potential motion from Councilmember Farrell.
Sure, I was encouraging her to do it, but I am thrilled to do it. I move that we move ordinance 44-102-24 out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Keegan. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 44-102-24 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation. We are now at ordinance 45-102-24, an ordinance for 500,000 serial bonds to pay the cost thereof DGS security fence installation. Objective and purpose is the purchase and installation of fencing materials at various city properties. Useful life of 5 years, $500,000. I know as part of the DGS conversation, we had a general conversation around when they are updating parks, they're also looking to update the fences so that you're not left with, a brand new park and a rundown fence. The other thing that I know DGS is doing with the fences is eliminating gates so that they are not, in the conversation we had, so that parks are not being unintentionally used as dog parks, where dogs are running free within the particular park and closing the gate. But this is ultimately just going to be for various locations. I don't know that we got an exact number, exact locations, but ultimate update of fencing to our city parks. Councilmember Keegan?
I think when we talked with them that there was a plan this year for there to be an audit. So I don't even think that they have necessarily finalized which locations, because they're actually part of the process that they're undergoing right now is actually doing an equity audit of the parks to determine where it is most important to update fencing throughout the parks that are under their control in the city.
Yep.
And I believe, if I remember correctly, that is including some of the places and spaces that are under Rec's authority.
Mm-hmm.
That was my memory as well.
Yeah.
And I
Take
would
it-
just
take
add
inventory.
that fences have been a big topic of conversation with DGS for the past few years. I don't know if we didn't do fences for a while and now we're having a big fence crisis, but I feel like they've talked a lot about fences for the past few years.
I concur. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Looks like I have a motion from Councilmember Keegan.
I move for ordinance 45-102-24 to move out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Valorant. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 45-102-24 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation. Okay. Ordinance 46-102-24 is issuance of 250,000 serial bonds to pay the cost thereof DGS streetscape and park fixtures. The purpose is acquisition and installation of streetscape and park fixtures. Useful life 5 years. Again, estimated cost 250,000. Councilmember Keegan.
I believe that this was part of their audit plan, and that part of the purpose of this is that they're doing sort of an ADA review of the parks that have already been updated to ensure that the ADA access has been completed. If you recall in that conversation, I was going to send them what we sent to Rec last year. and that they are looking to improve pathways and address the mobility impairment issues with the way that mulch was laid, so on and so forth. So that, I believe that that's what this is for, as well as the next one down, 47-102-24, I think is part of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Is there a motion? Councilmember Keegan.
I move that ordinance 46-102-24 be moved out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Adams. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 46-102-24 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation. Ordinance 47-102-24 is an ordinance to issue $340,000 of serial bonds to pay the cost thereof, DGS equipment and fixtures. The objective is acquisition of new and replacement of worn equipment. Useful life 5 years, again, $340,000. As Councilmember Keegan just said, we believe this is part of the overall review audit that they are doing of all parks and seeing where they can replace worn equipment. Councilmember Keegan.
I just also wanted to note on this one, they had talked about replacing benches and picnic tables, which are under their purview, with wheelchair accessible benches and picnic tables was part of the plan. So that audit plan, again, is going back to looking at not just basic ADA compliance, but actual inclusivity within parks, which I think is great to hear from them.
Agreed. Thank you. Councilmember Adams? Okay. Any further comments? Not seeing any. Do I have a motion? Motion from Councilmember Adams. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Farrell. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 47-102-24 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation. Okay. Ordinance 48-102-24 is ordinance to authorize the issuance of 450,000 serial bonds of said city to pay the cost thereof, DGS Capitol Hills rehabilitation and improvements. Objective is maintenance, improvements, and enhancements to Capitol Hills. Useful life 15 years, 450,000. Comments on Capitol Hills?
I would just note that they talked about doing, at the DGS presentation, they talked about doing some updates to Capitol Hills. And I think updates, they're looking at getting some electric golf carts too. But it's nice that this is one of the things that actually brings in some revenue to the city. So, and if it's not dog walking time, it is soon. So that's the part that I love.
Yep. Okay. All right. Looks like we have a motion from Councilmember Adams. Is there a second? Second from Councilmember Farrell. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 48-102-24 passes out of committee with a positive recommendation. Okay, next up we have ordinance 49-102-24. This is an ordinance for the issuance of 300,000 serial bonds of said city to pay the cost thereof, DGS storage sheds. Objective purpose, acquisition and installation of storage structures, 15 years useful life, 300,000. Comments on this ordinance? Councilmember Ballerin. Motion from Councilmember Ballerin. Is there a second on that motion? Second from Councilmember Adams. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 49-102-24 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation. Now we are at ordinance 50-102-24. This is an ordinance for the issuance of 1 million serial bonds of said city to pay the cost thereof, engineering ADA compliance. The objective is to ensure that sidewalks throughout our city are ADA compliant, useful life of 10 years, cost 1 million. Comments on this ordinance? Okay. Do I have a motion? Motion from Councilmember Adams, second from Councilmember Ballerin. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 50-102-24 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation. Ordinance 51-102-24 is an ordinance of the issuance of 600,000 serial bonds to pay the cost of engineering sidewalk reconstruction. The general purpose is sidewalk reconstruction, as we see every year. The useful life is 10 years, cost of 600,000. Comments on this ordinance? Do I have a motion? Motion from Councilmember Adams. Is there a second? Second from Councilmember Ballerin. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 51-102-24 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation. Okay, ordinance 52-102-24 is an ordinance for the issuance of 5 million serial bonds of said city to pay the cost thereof, engineering, street reconstruction. Again, this is our general street reconstruction ordinance for bonding that we see every year. This is for 15 years, useful life, 5 million. Councilmember Ballerin.
Don't we normally, well, first, thank you, Chair. Is this the bond that we normally hold until we see the list of streets that are going to be taken care of? I feel like we normally hold one until we get the list.
Yes, you are absolutely right. And so we are going to hold on 52-102-24.
Thank you.
Do I have the ability to pull back 51? Because we also typically hold for sidewalks, streets and sidewalks.
I believe you can. Let me just speak with our parliamentarian just to confirm if there's anything else extra that we would need to do.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for that reminder, Councilmember Ballerin. Okay. Moving forward, ordinance 53-102-24 is the issuance of 3,210,000 serial bonds to pay the cost thereof, DGS solid waste vehicles and equipment. Objective is vehicles for waste collection and landfill operations. This is 10 years, estimated cost of $3.2 million. Obviously, these are just the vehicles, but since this is related to the landfill, do committee members want to hold on this as well until we get more information? Councilmember Keegan.
This is for just the equipment though, correct? This is for the replacement of our existing fleet of garbage trucks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my concerns are really more so us pigeonholing ourselves into one specific corner when it comes to the long-term plan for the landfill and not so much the maintaining the current status quo of the trucks. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but
It does.
I don't, this particular bond does not concern me.
Okay. Just wanted to check in because it's adjacent to the other one, but sounds like, from my perspective, I'm comfortable. Sounds like Councilmember Keegan is comfortable. Councilmember Ballerin.
I just want to, so these are trucks that we're going to need no matter what, because in 2 years when we close the landfill, we're still going to need these trucks to collect.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a motion?
You got it.
Okay. Motion from Councilmember Adams, second from Councilmember Ballerin. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 43-102-24 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Councilmember Frederick. So we do have the answer. The committee can just move to withdraw their positive recommendation from that ordinance.
Okay. Do I have a motion to withdraw ordinance 51-102-24?
Just to clarify, the motion isn't to withdraw the ordinance, the motion is to withdraw the positive recommendation of the committee for the ordinance.
Okay. Do I have an ordinance to withdraw the positive recommendation to move forward with ordinance 51-102-24?
So moved.
Motion from Councilmember Keegan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Adams. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Our positive recommendation for 51-102-24 has been withdrawn until we receive our list of streets and sidewalks. Okay. Back to where we were. We're on ordinance 54-102-24 now. This is the ordinance for the issuance of 1.5 million serial bonds to pay the cost thereof, Information Technology Enterprise Resource Planning System. The objective is the acquisition and implementation of a citywide financial and human resources ERP software. Useful life 10 years, 1.5 million. Comments, questions on this ordinance? Councilmember Keegan.
I felt very positively about the Department for Administrative Services plan for this. I think while it may not necessarily initially be effective at addressing some of the concerns that have come up for our ad hoc committee on workforce ethics, it sounds like this system will help them move into the direction where they're consistently implementing discipline, consistently implementing policy standards, and having an easier time of managing human resource records overall. So I felt very good about their plan to sort of digitize this process, because I think the technology may actually help us be more equitable in how we manage our workforce going forward, if implemented appropriately and correctly. So,
Thank you, Councilmember Keegan. Any additional comments? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to move forward with ordinance 54-102-24 with a positive recommendation.
Motion from Councilmember Ballerin, second from, did I hear a second over there? Second from Councilmember Adams. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 54-102-24 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation. Ordinance 55-102-24 is an ordinance for the issuance of 750,000 serial bonds to pay the cost of Albany Police Department Public Safety IT systems. The objective is acquisition of integrated records management and computer-aided dispatch systems. Useful life 10 years, 750,000. Councilmember Keegan.
I think this is, we did a fairly large bond. I can't remember if it was for fiscal year 2023 or fiscal year 2024, in order to align our systems with state police and the FBI systems. And I believe that this is the last piece of that integration to ensure that our officers when they're out in the field and they're utilizing their vehicular computers, and when our crime analysis center is attempting to provide crime analysis support to our officers when they're conducting investigations, that those systems are able to adequately talk to the state and federal law enforcement systems. So that was my recollection of that discussion. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add.
No, I think you covered that quite well. I think we passed the large one last year.
So I have no objections to us passing the ordinance.
Okay. If no further comments, do I have a motion? Councilmember Keegan.
I move to discharge ordinance number 55-102. Wait, sorry, am I on the right one? 55-102-24, out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Ballerin. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 55-102-24 passes out of committee with a positive recommendation. Just want to note that we are currently now at quorum, so please.
We are.
Yeah, so please no one leave right now. Hopefully, Mr. Adams will come back shortly.
There are snacks in the back if anybody's desperate.
But grab it after he comes back. Okay. Ordinance 56-102-24 is an ordinance for the issuance of 500,000 serial bonds of said city to pay the cost thereof. Albany Police Department Police Station infrastructure improvements. The purpose is physical improvements to APD facilities, 15-year useful life, 500,000. Comments on this ordinance?
I don't remember what specific, I think this was the final implementation of the buildings on Henry Johnson, but I don't remember specifically what this was for, to be honest. I know we talked about it. It's not coming to me. I know it's a couple facilities, but I'm not opposed to holding this and getting more information. I think we should, because I know we talked about it, but I don't remember exactly which buildings,
Yeah.
what.
And I don't remember Henry Johnson, so can't help there. Okay. So we're going to hold on ordinance 56-102-24 to gain further information on the particular facilities. Okay. An ordinance 57-102-24 is an ordinance for 300,000 serial bonds to pay the cost of Albany Police Department motor vehicles. The objective is acquisition of replacement vehicles per APD's replacement schedule for 300,000, useful life of 5 years estimated. We did go over their replacement schedule during their presentation. Any questions, comments on this? Councilmember Adams. Okay.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Adams, second from Councilmember Ballerin. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 57-102-24 passes out of committee with a positive recommendation. Ordinance 58-102-24 is an ordinance for 1,750,000 serial bonds to pay the cost of Albany Fire Department fire vehicles. The purpose for this particular one is the purchase of an additional ladder truck, useful life of 20 years for this truck. We did discuss this during their presentation as well. Any comments, questions on this purchase? Councilmember Keegan.
Oh, I was just raising my hand to make a motion.
Perfect.
I move for ordinance 58-102-24 to be moved out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Motion from Councilmember Keegan, second from Councilmember Adams. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 58-102-24 passes out of committee with a positive recommendation. Ordinance 59-102-24 is an ordinance for the issuance of 300,000 serial bonds to pay the cost of Albany Fire Department fire station infrastructure improvements. The objective is rehabilitation and infrastructure improvements at city firehouses. Useful life, 15 years, estimated, again, 300,000. Comments on this ordinance? Councilmember Keegan.
This is another one where I know we talked about this, but I don't remember which buildings they talked about. And with the firehouses, I know we have multiple historic, I mean, our firehouses are pretty old for the most part. And I just don't remember which buildings, but I thought they were talking about bathrooms. You remember?
1 second, I think I have it, I hope. Got every other one. Why don't we also hold on 49-102-24 just to confirm which particular locations are being updated. We did discuss, I just don't have my fire or APD presentations from that evening. Okay. And feel free if there's any additional information you guys have, please do jump in there.
I was trying to look at the presentations from APD and AFD. Neither of those two items that we talked about were included in the presentations.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The next one is ordinance 60-102-24. I just want to work through these numbers because I know that we had to amend, but this is as written. An ordinance amending ordinance number 66-102-23, which also authorizes the city certain purchases for an estimated cost of $10 million, authorize lease financing issuance of $12 million serial bonds of said city to pay the cost thereof Recreation West Hill Community Center by increasing such maximum estimated cost to $20,500,000 and such authorizations to $18,500,000. Just one note, we do have a typo in the ordinance for the word estimated, last mention there. So let's just make sure we are comfortable with this. So if we look at the objective or purpose, this is a reconstruction or improvements to West Hill Community Center. What you're seeing is a useful life of 15 years. We're crossing out 10 million, which was the original estimated cost, and replacing with 20,500,000. We are then crossing out 12 million, which was the maximum amounts for bonds, and updating that to 18,500,000. We then proceed to update in section 2, 12 million of the issuance of bonds to 18,500,000. Let's see if there's anything else. And that is it for the changes that are made.
And that,
Councilmember Keegan.
sorry. And that includes the 2 million that we allocated from ARPA, correct? But we don't, did they provide us with the final plan for how they plan to spend the 18,500,000? I know we talked about this, but I don't feel like we got any detailed
We don't
plans.
have a detailed plan. We talked about it from a more higher level, but they haven't shared a detailed breakdown of that 18.
It does look like their plan of financing includes $2 million. I would believe that'd be the ARPA.
So the difference between the estimated cost and the bonding is the ARPA money. But to your point, would committee members like to request a more detailed breakout of those expenses for West Hill?
I personally would really like, I mean, we're authorizing to spend $18 million on something. I would like to know how we're going to spend $18 million.
Absolutely.
I'm not objecting to spending $18 million. I just want to know how we got there.
Okay. Looks like we have a consensus of the committee, so we are going to hold on 60-102-24. Similarly, I'm going to walk us through this one, and for the purposes of understanding the numbers, but similarly, I think we'll come to the same conclusion. So this is ordinance 61-102-24, an ordinance amending ordinance 67-102-23 from last year, authorizing certain purchases of the city of Albany for a maximum estimated cost of $5 million, and authorize the lease financing or issuance of $7,400,000 serial bonds for, so this one still has the typo that I mentioned. It says West Hill still on it, but it is related to Hoffman Community Center. And then by increasing such maximum estimated cost of $10,150,000 and such authorizations to $7,750,000. So the objective again is for Hoffman, reconstruction and improvements, 15-year useful life. The maximum estimated cost of $5 million from last year was striked out, replaced with $10,150,000. The maximum amount for bonds of $7,400,000 was striked out, replaced with $7,750,000. And then similarly in section 2, $7.4 million was striked out and replaced with $7,750,000. And what we are going to do here similarly, although less cost, is ask for a detailed breakout of the expenses. Perfect. Okay. Moving forward to ordinance 62-102-24. This is an ordinance for the issuance of $1,220,000 of serial bonds of said city to pay the cost thereof recreation playgrounds. The objective is improvements to playgrounds citywide, useful life 15 years, estimated cost $1.22 million. It looks like in section 2 we're missing a comma. Just want to call that out on the number. If we can adjust that. Comments on this ordinance? Councilmember Keegan.
So we had sort of at-length discussions with Recreation last year about ADA accessibility, and I feel like the responses were again the same. And my other concern is that they seem to only be dealing with one company in terms of the RFP for equipment, and I'm not sure that that company actually even builds the type of equipment that we would like to see built going forward on our playgrounds. And that was, my objection is not regarding the specific locations, because I know one of them included your the park in your district that we have significant flooding issues with, and I think the other piece that we were asking for was the flood mitigation plan for your particular park, which they weren't, in my opinion, able to adequately answer. I know it was part of the plan, but or something that they were thinking about, but there was no specific, this is exactly how we're going to do that. So I would like to see some more detail as to what it is that we're actually buying.
How do committee members feel about holding on this one and asking for more detail? We're at 62-102-24. Is your mic on, Sergio? Okay.
I don't mind waiting. I mean, I think at least from my memory, during that discussion, they had mentioned that the vendor that they were purchasing the equipment from was now providing or making more ADA compliant equipment, and that was more sizable to children here. I don't know if that was part of your point, but.
No, they once again talked about ADA swings, which is not what we asked for last year. It was not the prospectus that we provided. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is to actually get the name of the company and look at what they provide, because they've been providing the Department of Rec with advice as to how to do ADA compliance, and I'm not sure that that is a company that even specializes in the kind of equipment that we wanted to have installed in our city parks. Because it's the companies that do the kind of equipment that I was pushing for us to have installed, there's a certain caveat of companies that specialize in this and do this, and the companies that don't specialize and do this are not going to be selling us the kind of equipment that we're looking to install. I guess that's my point. And so if they're still utilizing the same vendor that built all of our other playgrounds, then they're not doing what we asked them to do last year.
I mean, for that reason, I'm fine with trying to get that clarification and details as to the items that they're purchasing and the vendor. So I support that.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Okay, we are going to hold on 62-102-24 with the purpose of getting more information on ADA compliance and also the particular parks being updated, including Whitehall, the particular plan to address the flooding issues that we have. Okay, ordinance 63-102-24 is an ordinance for the issuance of 390,000 serial bonds to pay the cost of recreation spray pads. The useful life 15 years, and the purpose is just general city improvements, just citywide improvements to our spray pads. The one thing I will note is that they, it was either in the budget presentation or earlier presentation, they did talk about the spray pad equipment being enhanced so that they can automatically turn it on and not have to send a employee out to turn it on or turn it off, and that will help with particularly, you know, with our climate change earlier days when it's extremely hot, they can, you know, turn it on more faster than they have been able to in the past. Councilmember Keegan.
I think they also talked about doing ramping to the spray pads, so there was an ADA compliance component with this particular bond. And I can attest, having my first job been for the Department of Rec here in the city of Albany as a lifeguard, having to key on and key off pools it's a real thing. I think it's very smart for the city to be looking at having technology that allows for us to remotely turn on and turn off that equipment, especially since it does allow for the city to be able to open up the spray pads during off-season when we have significantly hot weather that's typically not expected, so we don't yet have the seasonal staff in place to be able to do that work. So I have no issues with this part of the ordinances.
Okay. Any other comments on this ordinance? Motion from Councilmember Adams, second from Councilmember Keegan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ordinance 63-102-24 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation. Our last one, ordinance 64-102-24 is an ordinance for the issuance of 150,000 serial bonds to pay the cost of recreation maintenance equipment. The objective is machinery and equipment needed to maintain recreation assets. Useful life of 15 years estimated for such equipment. Comments on this ordinance? Okay. Is there a motion? Do I have a second? Motion from Councilmember Adams, second from Councilmember Ballerin. All those in favor? Aye. Ordinance 64-102-24 moves out of committee with a positive recommendation. Okay. Oop. Just to recap where we are, we have now gone through all of our bond ordinances. We have held on a few, and I'm just going to recap those for our purposes and for the public. So to date, including yesterday and today, we have held on 39-102-24 for 650,000 serial bonds for streetlights capital improvement. We had some questions on that we are going to look for further information on. We have also held on ordinance 41-102-24 for $3,366,000 for the waste management plan based on our discussion this evening. We have held on ordinance 43-102-24. That's 1 million serial bonds for DGS public bathrooms as we would look to gather further information. We have also held on ordinance 51-102-24 and 52-102-24, both related to streets and sidewalks, as we await those lists from the department. We have held on 56-102-24 for APD facilities, just wanting to get further clarification on the particular facilities being updated. We have also held on 59-102-24, Albany Fire Department facilities improvements, holding on that to get confirmation on which facilities are being impacted. We have held on 60-102-24 and 61-102-24 relating to amending the authorizations for West Hill and Hoffman as we look to get a more detailed breakdown of the planned expenditures. We have held on 62-102-24 in relation to our playgrounds, and I believe that's all encompassing of the ordinances that we have held on. Okay. That takes us through bonds for now. Taking a pulse on this committee, how are we feeling? Good? You want to keep going? Because just for the record, so because we are not voting November 4th, we have noticed 2 additional meetings, November 6th, which is next Wednesday, and then the following Wednesday, November 13th. We haven't officially noticed those are going out tomorrow. I do know that the 6th we had a couple conflicts, but it did look like potential conflicts, but it did look like we would meet quorum. So we'll have 2 more meetings in addition to tonight to work through our adjustments, our budget intent memo, and everything else, and the remaining bonds after we get further information. So optional, but we can start talking through the items that we've heard during budget this evening about potential proposed amendments we would like to make, or we can hold that and start fresh on the 6th after you get a draft of everything we've heard. Councilmember Keegan.
I was more so wanted to discuss some things that I am not asking for us to amend the actual structure of the budget for, but to have a group discussion around the future of the engineering department and what we want to include in the budget memo for planning for fiscal year 2026.
Yep.
Because this is sort of like my baby over the last few years, and I will be carrying the legislation for the creation of the department. I have been in talks with Howard about what that department really needs in terms of adequate staffing for it to function, because we essentially moved a significant number of responsibilities under that department but did not really provide him with adequate staffing. So I was hoping with everyone's blessing that I can sort of flush that out and take on that portion of the budget memo.
From my perspective, I am fully supportive of Councilmember Keegan taking that on, and I appreciate that you've been in close contact with Howard, and I know all the work that you've put in thus far to make this happen, so absolutely.
Anybody else object? Okay.
Okay.
Just to add like a comment to that though, just as a shared concern with the engineering department, it was their comments in regards to their comments in regards to just hiring, because again, some of those engineer positions that they're looking for are very hard to fill. I guess my concern is the impact that's going to have on the actual department as to them getting up and running, especially with the amount of responsibilities and duties that we've moved to that department. So I'm hoping that through this intent memo that we'll send out, that we also just include our support for making sure that they are staffed to be efficient, but also capable of doing what we're asking.
My plan with Howard is sort of multifaceted. Currently, we contract out for a good portion of our engineering services. So, and they're going to be responsible for the structural maintenance of all city buildings, the structural maintenance of all city roads, all of that sort of long-term planning, as well as traffic engineering, which means that the department is going to have a substantial impact on bike ped infrastructure, all of those things that we keep talking about. So I think first and foremost, we need to look at the potential cost savings of not having to necessarily go and contract out for every single engineering decision that's made as we're doing our street infrastructure plans, so on and so forth. And then the second piece is really looking at what does he need in terms of support staff and what does he need in terms of actual licensed and credentialed staff, and then figuring out where on the city pay scale spectrum that we currently have those positions really fit. And for my purposes, I would typically be looking at ensuring that we're at least in that memo providing the administration with estimates that would at least make us competitive with entities like DOT in terms of trying to find qualified, licensed staff persons. So again, I think all of those components are there, but first and foremost, he can't even attempt to hire until he's authorized those positions. And that's really the place that I'm trying to get to the department to, at least in the next year or so, is expanding the number of authorized positions that he has to hire for. If we go through that process and he truly cannot find licensed qualified staff to do this work within the city of Albany, or who are willing to relocate to the city of Albany, at that point, then we have to come back to the table to consider whether or not we're going to authorize a waiver for that department to bring on those folks. But we're not even there yet, because first and foremost, we're looking at having to structurally add in costs to the department to build out that staffing. Does that answer your question?
No, yeah, I mean, that's the long-term point that I was trying to get to, of just the difficulty of finding those skilled people, and at some point we may have to actually have that conversation of needing those waivers to get qualified good people. So that's it.
Councilmember Ballard, is there anything you want to bring up in relation to local law L proposed? Would that have any relevancy here?
That's the residency requirement. I think that's going up into the council, and hopefully we'll be able to get that. Look, I know it's a controversial subject, but I think that's something that we heard from many of our department heads about opening up the residential requirement. I think, many of our positions, we're struggling to find people, and I think it's encouraging that we want to hire within our city, and it's definitely something that we should definitely try to promote. but if it comes at the expense of not having people to be able to provide services for our residents, I think it's a detriment. So I think that's hopefully something we can get through the council, and you know, hopefully we can get it done before the end of this year, and starting next year we can just help get these positions filled all over the city. You know, we're down, I think, 15 telecommunication 911 operators. That's close to like 30–40% of their total staffing. So, you know, there's a lot of vacancies all over our city. We need to start being more aggressive. And I think eliminating this barrier will help us be a little bit more aggressive on that. We can't shoot ourselves in the foot. But that is a discussion that I know is going to be a passionate discussion, because I know there's many colleagues you know, that have different viewpoints, and I respect those different viewpoints that my colleagues have. I just think that, you know, at least the way this has been written allows us to try to fill those gaps in the next few years as we are finding this shortfall. You know, we're not the only municipality. We're not the only, you know, the state's having problems finding staff. Everyone's still struggling to find, you know, a workforce. And I'm going to say this: our workforce is not the workforce that the new generation is seeking, because our workforce still has the traditional 9-to-5 or the traditional in-person work, where this new generation is seeking more remote work. So we need to make sure we are able to attract those who are looking to do these jobs and not create additional barriers. But that's for a discussion for another day.
Thank you for the preview. I thought that was pretty relevant to the discussion that we were having on the engineering position. So more conversation to come. I'm interested to hear your perspective further on that. Okay, so just from a overview perspective, the amendments that I think that we are pursuing this year are as follows, and this might not be all encompassing. I think I will be having some additional conversations with our staff as well, so there might be something else that comes up here, but thus far, I know the CPRB, there's an interest to increase them to 804, 120K additional to get them to where they were last year. On the topic of housing, we did receive back the vacancy study results where we did not qualify, and I know that some council members would like to, and housing advocates would like to pursue additional funding towards hopefully re-review or some mechanism of seeing if we've truly exhausted our means to qualify for rent control. Approximately 100 to 125,000. And then another request that we discussed this evening during caucus was animal control licenses for the dog license system that the city clerk maintains. There's also a city clerk equipment request, I believe, where maybe Shaniqua, you could speak to that.
Not necessarily equipment, but furnitures and fixtures. I got a few quotes, and it was over the amount that was budgeted for next year, and closer to the 13,000 to provide 4 new desks in the main area, and then make an actual office space in where my deputy and the violence prevention coordinator sits. So it was upward to close to the 13,000 for all of those.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. 13,000 for furnitures and fixtures for the city clerk. And then finally, the Violence Prevention Task Force has, in their subcommittees, put together a preliminary budget request to do outreach, print materials, attend some trainings, for example. So that is something that we will be discussing as well. Is there anything that, based on the conversations we've had the last month or so together, that I'm fundamentally missing here. Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I think it's a very good list. I was putting down my list, and you hit most of them. I know we also talked about trying to add money for the Albany Fire Department's training. They came in and asked if we can get that up. I don't know the exact number. I know I did ask Gideon if he had a better number, and he said he'd get something for us. I'm thinking roughly between 75 and 80,000 additional to that line. You know, we'd have to get those numbers from Gideon. But I do remember that was part of what the union came and spoke about for additional funding for their training. And I also think it's important that we put in the statement that we really want to encourage the city to settle a lot of those outstanding unions contracts. You know, specifically the non-sworn union, non-sworn staff at APD, the telecommunication staff, 911 dispatchers with APD, and our blue-collar workers. It's very disheartening to see our budget book and see that those individuals are not getting any increases next year. So I think it's important that we, again, make a statement that we'd like this administration to settle those contracts as soon as possible. The only other thing I would say, I know we talked about animal control technology. I know there was conversation also about adding an animal control staff member, if possible, or adding funding for an extra animal control staff member to see if we can, give that sector of that department a little bit more help.
Yeah. That is part of it. With a little premature in speaking to this, but working with city staff to determine what can we actually do. But at minimum, that would be included in the budget intent memo. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Keegan.
The other thing that we discussed, including in the budget, and it may be a moot issue if the auditor's office actually has funding to do it, but that was bringing on or having the ability to contract out for assisting with the Workforce Ethics Committee documentation and having funds to potentially hire contracted services to assist with that process, which I think we estimated to be around 75,000. I think staff mentioned that the auditor may have like an actual audit fund that we may be able to request that they E&A from that fund to the council, and or that the auditor takes that over. So one of the things that we may want to determine before we start pulling office supplies from people to come up with that dollar amount is there another source in the auditor's office that can be utilized for that purpose?
Thank you. So I have, just to recap, CPRB, housing, animal control licenses, potential animal control staff, city clerk, furniture and fixtures, violence prevention task force, Albany Fire Department training, workforce and ethics committee, audit, external funding. And on that topic, so the approach taken last year I thought was, went well in terms of coming together with our full ask, sitting down with the administration, then actually our budget director, who knows the budget best, came up with certain areas to adjust so that we could have the particular items that we were looking for. Thus far, it sounds like we want to do a similar approach for this year. I will say our ask are adding up to higher than probably the administration is anticipating. So I don't need anyone, what I'm saying right now is I don't need anyone to start like looking where we can pull, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 from. Let me have those initial conversations with the administration. If we hit some contention or disagreement, then we can start to really deep dive. But from my perspective, I think that the person that built, or the department that built the budget knows their budget best, and they can help us there. Councilmember Keegan.
I was kind of hoping Jake might be able to weigh in a little bit. I personally, and I understand where the advocates and certain council members are coming from with regards to the vacancy study, but, you know, initially that ask seemed to be in relation to getting the vacancy study done. We know that the study is done, and we didn't meet the threshold that we needed to meet. I reviewed the report that the city submitted. It looked like they did an incredibly thorough job in trying to get us to that 5% mark in terms of the review that they did. And my concern with us allocating funding for this year is that even if we were to produce a new set of data that somehow magically got to that 5%, have we muddied the waters at this point in terms of potential litigation by having a different data set so close to redoing that study? Because that, to me, is I'm not saying I would never want to reallocate funding for a vacancy study. My concern is doing it, you know, having those data sets pulled in a very short period of time and what the legal implications would be if we somehow made the mark with a new data set.
So I don't want to speculate on what the results of litigation would be, but in a world where we commissioned a company that has experience doing that, I could see, I'm sure that if a housing emergency was declared and individuals had a financial interest in not seeing it happen, they would probably try to argue that the older vacancy study should be the applicable one. That would be a long, complicated process. There's a good argument that if we commission people who have expertise, that you could then say, sure, we did that study, but this is why this one is better. But that would all, this is so far in the future that it would be very hard to speculate what would or wouldn't happen in that, and it would involve litigation. Actually, it would probably involve litigation. I can't predict exactly what the people
I don't think that you can necessarily predict the outcome of any litigation. I think my concern is that you pulled two different data sets within a very short period of time. I think if we were to delay for another year and pull a new data set, it becomes a whole different ballgame in terms of the legitimacy of that new data set.
Yeah, I think that this is a good discussion, and we're going to have a more, I see Mr. Ballerin's hand up, we're going to have a more fruitful discussion, I'm sure, but that's a legitimate concern, I think. The other thing I will add to this is I did receive a preliminary feedback from Housing Advocacy today. I don't know if that's final and ready to distribute, but I'll clarify with them and distribute to you all, but there were some concerns around how the data was pulled that they have expressed. Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you, Chair. Two things. One, I think we all have to acknowledge the work that our staff went through this past year to do that study for us, and reading part of it, we definitely have to be very appreciative for all that work and all that information that they brought to us, and in many ways discussed it in some of the ways that they were treated by some of these individuals, when they were making these phone calls. Our staff should never have to deal with that type of mistreatment. I'm glad our staff held their composure and moved forward with the work that they were tasked. It's shameful that some people feel that they can mistreat our staff when they're doing their jobs. So, we should all be very thankful to all those people who put in months of work into getting the survey done. And I think that survey has given us a lot of good information to work off. I think it's given us a lot of new data and new ways to look at the issue that would allow us to recreate or bring a new survey forward that had a stronger look at the real vacancy. And I think we have to have a deeper dive into vacant units that are marketable versus make vacant units that are not marketable. You know, and in many cases, you know, we find that there was units that were put as vacant, but the building didn't have enough ROPs, you know, to classify them as vacant. So we look at the ROPs and we look at the total number of vacancies. We have to take that into consideration. You know, and I think that's information we wouldn't have had if that work hadn't been done. This is a very, you know, touchy subject, and we know that other municipalities, any municipalities that have gone down this road, have found themselves dealing with lawsuits on a pushback. So when we decided to go down this road last year, when we funded to go down this road, I think we did knowing that there would be pushback from it. Whenever you've got these type of issues, you're going to have that. So I would expect for us to get pushback where we do it next year or the year after. There will be pushback. That's just, you know, the system that we work with. I recommend we move forward next year for multiple reasons. One, there's lessons learned from what was done this previous years that we can take to strengthen our position next year. Also, this is the last year this council is going to be together. This is the last year this council has the opportunity to actually get this done. You know, many of us will still be here. Some of us will go to different opportunities. You know, but this is the last year this specific body with this membership will have to be able to get this done and done in a way that, you know, no matter what the outcome is, we can say we've put all we could to try to address this issue and to try to get some movement on this issue. So I think 125,000 towards trying to get a vendor, an outside entity that does this, and to take all that great information that we've already put together and move that forward. I think it is a reasonable investment in an issue like this. And again, this is just one tool in many tools when it comes to trying to address the housing crisis. This is not the end all, but it is one tool. And I think we should try to get that tool while we still can, while we're still here, you know, and many of us may still be here in 2026, but some of us won't. So this is our shot.
Councilmember Adams.
Just real quick. I agree with everything everyone said. Just one of the things based off just the vacancy study, one of the things that I took from reading through it, and it's a bigger conversation, so I'll just keep it short, but one of the things that I've seen that they identified was, again, the repair cost and the turnover costs for units as being, you know, a issue for property owners, landlords, and one of the maybe possible solutions to that is, again, maybe next year's budget, working to increase the funding for the community block grants and some of the grants that are being offered through the neighborhood services to really assist landlords with renovating costs to get units turned over quickly. Because a lot of the property owners, landlords that I know, they purposely withhold units because of the cost to turn them over. To them, it's not worth it. But if we're able to have some type of funding source or resources that they can tap into to assist them, I think that'll also help with our affordable housing issue. So that's it.
Councilmember Keegan.
I would just note to your comment, Councilmember Adams, most of those grants are pass-through, so the city isn't actually expending resources towards those grant programs. We receive federal funding, and that federal funding is very specific. So most of the landlords that are not turning over apartments as a result of prohibitive costs would not necessarily even qualify for the grants as stated, because they're usually capped based upon individual income. So they're grants that would apply, for example, if you were to purchase a property and you made under a certain threshold in income, you could apply for grants in order to help improve the property that you purchased. But a major landlord that owns multiple properties in the city and likely has an income that's well over $100,000 a year is not going to qualify for those grant programs. So for us to be able to create a program like that, we would be looking at going back to our inclusionary zoning and conceding to what the developers wanted, which was to, instead of having to include LIHTC eligible units within their developments, that we would actually allow them to pay us money to subset what those costs for those affordable units were, which in some municipalities has resulted in creating an affordable housing trust. And that's how they've created that sort of financial mechanism for those affordable housing trusts, which kind of delineates what we were trying to achieve with inclusionary zoning, which was ensuring that you had housing that was that represented multiple different types of incomes within one development, so that you started to decentralize the concentration of poverty in certain areas of the city. So it gets to be really dicey, and I don't know where we'd find in the budget a substantial amount of funding to be able to provide grant funding for people to redevelop subpar housing. I think that that's a bigger, broader issue that we may want to make some advocacy at the state and federal level for how tax incentives and grant funding is coming down for redevelopment of old housing stock, and whether or not, you know, those funds are available to projects that have partial affordable housing set-asides, like the types that we're trying to encourage here in the city of Albany. Because one of the major issues that I find is that it's all or nothing. You're either doing LIHTC or you're not. There's no in-between or funding to do partial LIHTC development anywhere. And if we had that, I think that would be a game changer for what we're looking at in places like the city of Albany.
Thank you both. I think what this is telling me is, generally speaking, in the budget intent memo, we're going to put some language around needing to address, be able to rehab homes, different solutions towards that. But I think we have a larger discussion around, you know, do we advocate at the state level? Do we adjust our set-aside requirement, which is kind of where you went. So Councilmember Keegan?
Just one other point of note to your comment, Councilmember Adams, is also one of the things that drives costs for the city of Albany is the fact that we don't do reciprocity for licensing. So if you want to practice as a plumber or an electrician, so on and so forth in the city of Albany, you actually have to go through our city and get registered via our city, because we don't do reciprocity. So if you have gotten your licensing in Schenectady, Troy, Saratoga, it doesn't count towards Albany. And most other surrounding municipalities have reciprocity. And that does drive costs because we only do those exams every so often, so you have a very limited number of contractors that people can utilize. So there may be some other solutions to what's driving costs for redevelopment here in the city.
That's very interesting. I would be interested to see how much revenue we're getting from that reciprocity, or that lack of reciprocity, and requiring them to be registered or certified in Albany. Councilmember Ballerin.
Thank you. Two quick things. I think it's a great idea for us to try to find federal or state partners to try to create some type of initiatives so that, you know, to help landlords who are renting at affordable rates, because that's what we're really looking for, is to make it so that people don't spend more than 50% of their income on their living. You know, to help landlords be able to off some of those expenses that they have. You know, and I'd be in full support of that as well, if we can, you know, get some state or federal support. Or this would probably not be a private funds. They're looking more for government funds on this one. The only other thing is I will not be here on the 6th, so I'm not sure when we're looking to do a deeper dive on some of these issues that I know, you know, I'm a little more passionate about. So, you know, just want to make sure, you know, the committee's aware of that.
Councilmember Ballerin, I'm happy to move housing to the 13th. That, yeah, and we can cover everything else on the 6th. Understood. We'll see how the conversation goes. If we need to extend it to the 13th, we can. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. With that, we're nearing 7:30, so I'm happy to set a... So again, the plan for the 6th will be to go through the CPRB, animal control, city clerk, furniture, violence prevention. If we have the time, we will talk about housing and AFD, and also the workforce ethics committee. We got to get some information there on audit, on the city auditor though first. And also we'll try to gather information on the bonds that were outstanding, so we can hopefully cover that as well. On the 13th, we'll have it as a separate meeting. If we can't get through all items, we continue the conversation. Our goal is to get you a draft version of the budget intent memo prior to the 6th conversation, so that we can talk through it together as well. Some of the topics that we covered will not be amendments, or will more so be in the intent memo. What you received today on your desk is just basically a shell. Brian has started to pull information and revamp what we've had from prior years. Some things always stand that we re-up to current, and try to document some of the conversations we've had, but there will be an amended version to that prior to the 6th. Okay. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn from Councilmember Adams. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Keegan. All those in favor? Aye. Tonight's Finance Committee has concluded. Thank you all. Have a good evening.